The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their massive dreadnoughts cast shadows across entire star systems, and their quantum weapons could shatter planets with a single blast. Every species in the known galaxy either served them or had been reduced to cosmic dust. The Empire stretched across 4 spiral arms, encompassing over 10 million inhabited worlds. Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, watching the final battle unfold before him. The last free alliance of species was making their desperate stand in the Andromeda sector. Rebel ships swarmed like angry insects around his fleet, their weapons barely scratching the Empire's shields. This would be the end of organized resistance in the galaxy. "Sir, the rebel fleet is breaking formation," reported his tactical officer, her scaled hands dancing across holographic displays. "Their casualties are approaching 70%. Kextar nodded with satisfaction. The rebels had fought bravely for 50 years, but courage meant nothing against superior firepower. Soon, every species would kneel before the Empire and peace would reign through absolute control. The battle raged across 3 solar systems. Massive capital ships exchanged devastating salvos while fighter squadrons danced between them like deadly fireflies. The rebels fought with the fury of the desperate, knowing this was their last chance. Their alliance included the telepathic Mindari, the crystalline Vorthan, the energy-based Luminous, and dozens of other species. Together they had managed to challenge the Empire for half a century, but even united they were losing. "Admiral, we're detecting an anomaly," the sensor operator called out, her voice uncertain. "Something is approaching from the outer rim." Kextar turned his attention to the tactical display. A single blip appeared at the edge of sensor range, moving at impossible speeds. No known ship could travel that fast without entering hyperspace. Yet this vessel maintained such velocity in normal space. "Magnify the contact," he ordered. The main screen flickered, showing a sleek vessel unlike anything in their databases. It was relatively small, perhaps 2 kilometers in length, with strange angular designs and what appeared to be primitive chemical propulsion systems. The ship's hull bore markings in an unknown script. "Sir, it's broadcasting on all frequencies," the communications officer reported. "The message is strange. It claims to be from something called the United Nations of Earth and is requesting both fleets stand down immediately." Laughter rippled across the bridge. A single small ship demanding the mighty Zephyrian Empire cease its operations? The arrogance was almost amusing. "Response from the rebel fleet, sir. They're also confused by this newcomer. Admiral Thessarian is requesting identification from the unknown vessel." Kextar studied the alien ship with interest. Its technology seemed primitive, yet it had somehow crossed the galaxy faster than any known vessel. Perhaps these humans possessed some useful secrets that could benefit the Empire after their inevitable subjugation. "Open a channel to this United Nations," he commanded. "Let's see what these newcomers have to say before we add their world to our collection." The screen shifted to show the interior of the alien vessel. A bipedal creature appeared, standing upright on 2 legs with pale skin and strange hair, covering only the top of its head. Its eyes were small and set forward in its skull, suggesting a predator species. The being wore what appeared to be a primitive uniform with colorful insignia. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the UNS Defiance," the creature said in surprisingly clear galactic standard. "I represent humanity and the United Nations of Earth. We've been monitoring your conflict for the past 6 months." 6 months? Kextar was intrigued despite himself. "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected any monitoring systems." The human smiled, and something about that expression made several bridge officers step back instinctively. "We've been watching your entire civilization for quite some time, Admiral. Your empire, your rebels, your technologies, your tactics. We've studied everything. You speak boldly for someone commanding a single primitive vessel against the greatest military force in galactic history." Kextar replied. "State your business quickly, human. My patience has limits." "We're here to end this war," Captain Chen said simply. "Both sides have caused enough destruction. Trillions have died in this conflict. It stops now." The audacity was breathtaking. Kextar had conquered species that commanded thousands of ships, and this lone human believed she could dictate terms to him. "Captain Chen," he said with mock courtesy, "perhaps you don't understand the situation. The Zephyrian Empire controls 10 million worlds. Our fleet numbers in the hundreds of thousands. Your single ship, while technologically curious, poses no threat to us." "One ship," the human repeated thoughtfully. Admiral, how many ships does your empire possess total? Approximately 400,000 vessels of various classes, Kextar replied, wondering where this conversation was leading. And how long did it take you to build that fleet? 3 millennia of constant construction and conquest. Captain Chen nodded slowly. We built our first interstellar fleet 6 months ago. 47 million vessels in 6 months, Admiral. Would you like to see them? Before Kextar could respond, space around the battle zone began to shimmer. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as massive forms materialized from what appeared to be nowhere. Ship after ship appeared, each one larger than the human vessel but maintaining the same sleek, predatory design. The tactical display couldn't process the numbers fast enough. Thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of ships filled the space around both fleets. They appeared in perfect formation, their weapons powered but not yet targeting either side. Impossible, Kextar whispered. Nothing could remain hidden from our sensors. We weren't hidden, Captain Chen explained. We were waiting in what you might call a pocket dimension. Human technology took a different path than yours, Admiral. While you focused on raw power, we focused on creativity. The human fleet numbered 47 million vessels, just as Captain Chen had claimed. Each ship hummed with energy signatures that the Empire's computers couldn't identify or classify. They had somehow mastered space itself, folding reality to their will. Both fleets will power down weapons immediately, Captain Chen continued. This war ends today. You have 60 seconds to comply. Kextar's mind raced. Even if each human ship was primitive compared to his dreadnoughts, the sheer numbers were overwhelming. But the Zephyrian Empire had never surrendered. They had crushed every species they encountered through superior firepower and ruthless determination. You underestimate us, human, he snarled. We are the Zephyrian Empire. We do not yield to threats. Captain Chen's smile faded, replaced by something far more dangerous. Admiral, that wasn't a threat. That was a courtesy. This is a threat. One of the human vessels, no larger than a destroyer, fired a single beam at an abandoned asteroid in the nearby belt. The asteroid simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, it was simply gone, as if it had never been there at all. 30 seconds, Admiral. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent as the impossible sight registered in every mind present. An entire asteroid gone without a trace. No explosion, no debris field, no energy signature that their instruments could detect. The rock had simply been erased from existence. Admiral Kextar felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of conquest. Genuine fear. His tactical officers stared at their displays in shock, unable to comprehend what they had witnessed. The Zephyrian Empire's most powerful weapons could destroy planets, but this was something else entirely. How? He whispered, then caught himself and spoke louder. What kind of weapon was that? Captain Chen's expression remained neutral. We call it a reality anchor disruptor. It convinces matter that it never existed in the first place. The asteroid didn't die, Admiral. From the universe's perspective, it was never born. The implications were staggering. If humans could simply erase matter from existence, what chance did any conventional military force have against them? Yet Kextar had not conquered half the galaxy by surrendering at the first sign of superior technology. Impressive, he admitted. But you have revealed your hand too early, human. Now we know what we face. Do you? Captain Chen asked. That was our least sophisticated weapon system. We brought it along because it makes a good demonstration. Would you like to see what we actually consider dangerous? Before Kextar could respond, his communication officer interrupted. Admiral, we're receiving urgent transmissions from across the Empire. Our fortress worlds. They're reporting human fleets appearing in their systems. The blood drained from Kextar's face. Impossible. You only have 47 million ships here. Here, yes, Captain Chen confirmed. But Admiral, did you think we only built one fleet? Earth has been at war for most of our history. When we finally achieved peace, we didn't forget how to fight. We just got better at it. New tactical displays lit up across the bridge, showing reports flooding in from every corner of the Empire. Human fleets had appeared simultaneously at every major Zephyrian stronghold, military installation, and government center. Not small raids or probing attacks, but full invasion forces numbering in the hundreds of millions. 12 billion ships, Admiral, Captain Chen said quietly. That's what we deployed for this operation. It took us 3 weeks to plan and 6 hours to execute. Your empire is surrounded, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. The scale of the coordination required was beyond anything the Zephyrians had imagined possible. To simultaneously attack hundreds of star systems across the galaxy required logistics, communication, and strategic planning on a level that defied comprehension. "Sir?" The communications officer called out, voice shaking. "Emperor Vexthul is requesting immediate contact from the throne world." The main screen split, showing the golden-scaled visage of the Zephyrian emperor himself. Vexthul had ruled for over 800 years, conquering every species that dared challenge his authority. Now his vertical pupils were dilated with what could only be described as panic. "Kextar, what is happening?" the emperor demanded. "Human fleets have appeared at our core worlds. They're demanding our complete surrender within 1 hour. Who are these creatures?" "Your Majesty," Kextar began, but Captain Chen interrupted. "Emperor Vexthul, I presume," she said with a slight nod. "I am Captain Sarah Chen, representing the United Nations of Earth. We've been observing your empire's activities for some time now, and we've decided that your reign ends today." The emperor's crest flared in rage. "Insolent alien. Do you know who you address? I am the absolute ruler of 10 million worlds." "Were," Captain Chen corrected. "You were the ruler of 10 million worlds. As of 1 hour ago, every planet in your empire is under human protection. Your military installations have been disabled, your government centers surrounded, and your communication networks compromised." "Lies," Vexthul snarled. "No force in the galaxy could accomplish such a feat." "Admiral Thessarian of the Rebel Alliance might disagree," Captain Chen said. And another screen appeared showing the gray-skinned rebel leader. "Admiral, would you care to confirm our capabilities?" Thessarian looked haggard from decades of warfare, but her eyes held a gleam of hope that hadn't been there in years. "Emperor, I've just received confirmation from our agents throughout your territory. Human forces have indeed surrounded every major installation, but they're not attacking civilians. They're only targeting military assets and government buildings." "Impossible," the Emperor repeated, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Captain Chen gestured, and holographic displays appeared around both alien leaders. The displays showed real-time footage from across the galaxy. Human ships maintaining perfect formations around Zephyrian strongholds, their weapons powered but not firing. Wherever civilians were present, the humans kept their distance, but military targets found themselves unable to move without human permission. "We've been preparing for this intervention for 6 months, Captain Chen explained. "Every movement of your fleets, every supply line, every communication protocol. We mapped your entire civilization down to the smallest detail." "But why?" Admiral Thessarian asked. "Why would humans involve themselves in our conflict?" Captain Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because we've been where you are. Humanity spent most of our history fighting each other. We know what it's like to watch civilizations tear themselves apart in endless war. When we finally achieved peace, we swore we wouldn't stand by and watch others make the same mistakes. Peace through conquest is still peace," Emperor Vexthul argued, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "No," Captain Chen replied firmly. "Peace through fear is just delayed war. Real peace requires understanding, compromise, and mutual respect. Your empire has ruled through terror for 3 millennia. That ends now." The tactical displays updated again, showing the scope of the human intervention. Every Zephyrian fleet had been surrounded and neutralized without a single shot being fired. The rebel forces found themselves similarly encircled, though the human ships near them maintained a more respectful distance. "What are your terms?" Admiral Kextar asked, accepting the inevitable. "Complete disarmament of both military forces," Captain Chen stated. "Immediate cessation of hostilities, release of all political prisoners, and participation in a galaxy-wide peace conference to establish new governing principles." "And if we refuse?" Emperor Vexthul demanded. Captain Chen's smile returned cold and predatory. "Then we demonstrate why humanity spent 10,000 years learning to wage war before we learned to make peace." "Your choice, Emperor." The silence stretched across space, broken only by the hum of ship systems and the distant explosions of the battle that had been raging before humanity's arrival. Both sides now found themselves facing an impossible decision: surrender to an unknown species or face technology that could erase matter from existence. "Sir," Kextar's tactical officer whispered, "our quantum computers have finished analyzing the human ship designs. The results, they don't make sense." According to our physics, those vessels shouldn't be able to exist. Kextar looked at the readings and felt his world shift. The human ships weren't just advanced. They operated on principles that defied everything. The galaxy thought it knew about reality. These weren't mere weapons or tools. They were something far more dangerous. Proof that everything the greatest minds in the galaxy believed about the universe was incomplete. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, "exactly what kind of species are humans?" Captain Chen studied Admiral Kextar's question for a long moment before responding. Around them, the greatest military force in galactic history waited for an answer that would determine the fate of trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. "What kind of species are humans?" she repeated thoughtfully. "That's a complicated question, Admiral. We're the kind of species that spent 50,000 years learning to kill each other efficiently, then decided to become something better." She gestured toward the view screen showing Earth's massive fleet. "Every weapon system you see here was originally designed for human warfare. We've been fighting ourselves since we first picked up sticks and stones. We got very, very good at it." Emperor Vexthal's scales rippled with confusion. "You learned warfare from fighting your own kind?" "For most of our history, yes. We divided ourselves by geography, ideology, religion, resources, and sometimes just because we didn't like the way our neighbors looked. We fought with clubs, then swords, then gunpowder, then chemical weapons, then nuclear weapons that could sterilize continents." Admiral Thessarian leaned forward. "If you were so warlike, how did you achieve peace?" Captain Chen's expression grew somber. "We almost didn't. 300 years ago, we came very close to destroying ourselves completely. Nuclear war, biological weapons, ecological collapse. We lost 2 billion people in what we call the final wars. The numbers sent a chill through both alien leaders. 2 billion casualties in a single conflict was beyond anything in their experience, even considering the Zephyrian Empire's brutal conquests. But something changed," Captain Chen continued. "As we stood among the ashes of our burned cities, as we counted our dead and poisoned our own world, we finally understood what we were throwing away. We realized that our greatest enemy wasn't each other. It was our own capacity for self-destruction." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle across the bridge. "So we made a choice. We decided to turn that same intensity, that same determination we'd used to destroy each other toward building something better." "How?" Admiral Kextar asked, genuinely curious now. "We started with the hardest thing imaginable for our species. We forgave each other. Not because the wrongs weren't real, but because carrying hatred was destroying us. We established the United Nations not as a government, but as a promise that we would never again let our differences drive us to extinction." The holographic displays shifted, showing images of Earth's recovery. Cities rising from radioactive ruins, vast forests replanted where deserts had spread, oceans cleaned of industrial poison. "It took us 200 years to heal our world," Captain Chen explained. "During that time, we developed new technologies not for war, but for reconstruction. We learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level to clean up radiation. We mastered energy conversion to power our rebuilding efforts. We explored dimensional physics to find new space for our growing population." "Dimensional physics?" Emperor Vexthal's eyes widened. "You mean your ships actually travel through alternate realities?" "Among other things. When you spend centuries learning to rebuild a destroyed world, you get creative. We didn't just repair Earth, we made it better than it ever was. Then we looked to the stars and asked ourselves, what else could we improve?" Admiral Kextar began to understand. "You were observing us because you saw the same pattern that nearly destroyed humanity." "Exactly. 2 great powers locked in endless conflict with smaller species caught in between. We've seen this story before, Admiral. We lived it, and we know how it ends if no one intervenes." "But why not simply contact us diplomatically?" Admiral Thessarian asked. "Why this show of force?" Captain Chen's smile was sad but understanding. "Because we tried that approach once before. 50 years ago, we made contact with the Corvani Empire in the Outer Spiral. We offered our assistance in ending their civil war through peaceful negotiation. The name sent a ripple of recognition through both alien leaders. The Corvani had been a prosperous species with advanced technology and a rich culture. Then they had simply vanished from galactic communication. They laughed at us," Captain Chen continued. "A single world offering to mediate a conflict between star systems? They called us primitives and told us to return to our backwater planet and leave galactic affairs to our betters. What happened to them?" Admiral Kekstar asked, though he suspected he already knew. They destroyed themselves completely, bioweapons that targeted their specific genetic markers. By the time we could intervene, there wasn't enough of their species left to save. 70 billion beings died because pride prevented them from accepting help. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had already witnessed the complete extinction of an advanced civilization due to warfare. They weren't intervening out of moral superiority, but from bitter experience. So you decided to arrive with overwhelming force to ensure compliance, Emperor Vexthal said slowly. We decided to arrive with sufficient force to make the choice clear, Captain Chen corrected. You can surrender and work toward peace, or you can refuse and face the consequences of continued warfare. But this time the consequences won't be limited to your own species. You would destroy us? Admiral Kekstar asked. No, Captain Chen replied. We would stop you. There's a difference. Our reality anchors can erase weapons, ships, even entire fleets if necessary. But we've never used them against living beings. We prefer to make our point without casualties. As if to demonstrate, one of the human vessels fired its strange weapon at a Zephyrian dreadnought. The massive ship's weapon system simply ceased to exist, leaving the vessel intact but completely defenseless. The crew was unharmed, but their ability to wage war had been removed with surgical precision. Remarkable, Admiral Thessarian breathed. You could disarm our entire galaxy without killing anyone? If necessary. Though we prefer voluntary compliance, it makes the peace negotiations much more productive. Emperor Vexthal's shoulders sagged as the full scope of his situation became clear. What guarantees do we have that humanity won't simply replace our empire with your own? Because we've already tried ruling others, Captain Chen admitted. In our early space exploration, we established colonies on 12 worlds. Within 50 years, those colonies were demanding independence and threatening to rebel against Earth's authority. You granted them independence? Immediately. We learned that ruling others is just another form of warfare. Instead, we offered them partnership. Today, those worlds are our strongest allies and closest friends. They join us not because they have to, but because they choose to. The tactical displays updated again, showing human fleets beginning to withdraw from non-essential positions around the galaxy. They maintained containment of military targets but were clearly reducing their presence wherever possible. We're not here to conquer, Captain Chen explained. We're here to create space for peace to grow. Once both sides agree to negotiations, most of our fleet will return to Earth. We'll maintain just enough presence to ensure compliance with whatever agreements we reach. And if the peace fails? Admiral Kekstar asked. Then we'll try again, and again, and again. Humans are remarkably persistent, Admiral. We spent 50,000 years perfecting warfare. We're prepared to spend the next 50,000 perfecting peace. Emperor Vexthal looked at his admiral, then at the rebel leader, then back at Captain Chen. The weight of 3 millennia of absolute power pressed down on him as he contemplated a galaxy where force was no longer the ultimate arbiter. Very well, he said finally. The Zephyrian Empire will consider your proposal. I'm afraid consideration isn't enough, Your Majesty, Captain Chen replied gently but firmly. We need commitment. The killing stops now, today, or we make the choice for you. The Emperor's crest flared one last time in defiance, then slowly settled as reality set in. He was no longer the absolute ruler of the galaxy. That era had ended the moment humanity decided to intervene. The Zephyrian Empire formally agrees to immediate ceasefire and participation in peace negotiations, he announced, his voice heavy with the weight of history. Admiral Thessarian quickly followed suit. The Free Species Alliance also agrees to these terms. Captain Chen nodded with satisfaction. Excellent. Now shall we discuss what peace actually looks like? 3 weeks later, the Harmony space station hung in neutral space between 3 star systems. A marvel of human engineering completed in just 18 days. The massive structure rotated slowly, its bio-adaptive hull shifting colors to accommodate the visual preferences of its diverse occupants. Representatives from over 200 species had gathered for what historians would later call the Galaxy Accords. Captain Chen walked through the station's central corridor, observing the careful choreography of interspecies diplomacy. Zephyrian officials maintained respectful distances from former rebel leaders, while neutral species served as buffers between traditional enemies. The humans had learned much about galactic politics in the past month. Captain, Dr. Elena Vasquez, humanities chief xenoanthropologist, approached with a datapad. We've completed the preliminary cultural analysis. The results are concerning. Chen paused beside a viewing port that showed dozens of different ship designs docked to the station. Each vessel represented not just a species but an entire way of understanding the universe. How concerning? The Zephyrian Empire wasn't just a military dictatorship, Dr. Vasquez explained. For many species, it was the only form of government they've ever known. 3,000 years of being told what to do, what to think, how to live. We're asking them to suddenly become self-governing. Similar to post-war reconstruction on Earth, Chen mused. What about the Rebel Alliance? Better prepared for independence, but they've been fighting for so long that many of their leaders don't know how to do anything except resist. They've defined themselves entirely in opposition to the Empire. Without that enemy, they're struggling to find purpose. Chen nodded thoughtfully. The peace negotiations had revealed the true scope of the galaxy's problems. Military conquest had been only the surface layer of a much deeper crisis involving cultural identity, economic dependency, and social structure. Admiral Kextar is requesting a private meeting, Dr. Vasquez continued. He says it's urgent. Chen made her way to Conference Room 7, where she found the Zephyrian Admiral studying holographic star charts. His scaled skin looked duller than before, and his movements carried the weight of exhaustion. Captain Chen, he said without looking up, thank you for coming. What can I do for you, Admiral? Kextar gestured to the star charts. I've been reviewing the logistics of Imperial governance. Food distribution, energy allocation, transportation networks, communication systems. Do you know what I've discovered? Tell me. The Empire has no idea how to function without constant warfare. His voice carried genuine distress. Our entire economy was built on conquest. We strip resources from defeated worlds to fund our military, which conquers more worlds to strip more resources. It's a cycle that only works if you keep expanding. Chen sat down across from him. And now expansion has stopped, more than stopped. We're supposed to start returning seized assets to their original owners, but many of those worlds depend on Imperial infrastructure to survive. If we withdraw our supply ships and energy networks, billions will die. The complexity of the situation was staggering. The Zephyrian Empire hadn't just conquered worlds, it had created economic dependencies that made independence practically impossible for many species. What do you recommend? Chen asked. I don't know, Kextar admitted. I'm a military officer. I understand tactics, strategy, logistics of warfare. But this, building sustainable peacetime economies, creating stable governments, I have no training for this. Chen leaned back in her chair. Admiral, can I share something with you? Of course. After our final wars, Earth faced a similar problem. Our entire economy had been built around military spending and resource competition. When we achieved peace, we had to completely reinvent how our society functioned. How did you manage it? Very carefully and with a lot of mistakes. We started by admitting that we didn't have all the answers. Then we asked for help from everyone, even former enemies. Chen smiled slightly. Some of our best peacetime innovations came from people we'd been fighting just years before. Kextar looked skeptical. You think former rebels could help design a new imperial structure? I think former rebels understand better than anyone what the Empire was doing wrong. They've had 50 years to think about how to do things differently, but they hate us, rightfully so. They hate what you represented, Chen corrected. But you're not representing that anymore. You're representing the possibility of something better. Before Kextar could respond, Chen's communicator chimed. Captain, this is Dr. Vasquez. We have a situation in Conference Room 1. The Mindari delegation is refusing to participate in economic discussions. Chen sighed. On my way. She looked at Kextar. Want to come see how complicated peace really gets? Conference Room 1 buzzed with tension when they arrived. The Mindari, a species of telepathic beings with crystalline features, sat apart from the other delegates. Their leader, Silaseth, projected waves of distress that even non-telepaths could feel as a cold pressure in the air. The Mindari refused to discuss economic integration, announced Ambassador Telvar, a neutral species serving as mediator. They claim the entire concept is fundamentally flawed. Chen approached Silaseth carefully. The Mindari had been enslaved by the Empire for 2 millennia, their telepathic abilities exploited for communication and intelligence gathering. Silasith, what are your concerns? The Mindari leader's voice resonated with harmonic frequencies that conveyed emotion as much as meaning. Your peace assumes that species will cooperate based on mutual benefit. But we can feel the thoughts of others, Captain Chen. We know what truly drives most beings. And what do you feel? Fear, greed, resentment, barely contained hatred. Silasith gestured toward the other delegates. Remove the threat of your weapons and these species will return to conflict within a generation. They cannot help themselves. A murmur of angry voices rose from around the room. Admiral Thessarian stood, her gray skin flushed with indignation. The Mindari presume to judge us based on thoughts rather than actions? Your actions spring from your thoughts, Silasith replied calmly. We have seen the darkness in every species we've encountered. The Empire's cruelty was merely an expression of tendencies that exist in all of you. Including humans? Chen asked quietly. Silasith's crystalline features shifted, creating patterns of light that indicated deep contemplation. Humans are different. Your thoughts are chaotic, contradictory, filled with violence and compassion in equal measure. You think constantly of war while working desperately for peace. It should not be possible, yet we observe it. Because we know what we're capable of, Chen explained. We've seen our own darkness and chosen to fight against it every day. Emperor Vexthal spoke from across the room. Are you suggesting that peace is impossible? I am suggesting that peace without growth is impossible, Silasith corrected. Your species must evolve beyond their current limitations or they will repeat the same cycles of conflict. How? Admiral Kextar asked. How does an entire species evolve? Chen looked around the room at the assembled delegates, each representing billions of beings with their own hopes, fears, and prejudices. The weight of responsibility was overwhelming, but she remembered something from Earth's own transformation. One person at a time, she said finally. We start with ourselves, then we help others. We build institutions that encourage growth rather than exploitation. We create systems that reward cooperation over competition. And if we fail, Ambassador Telvar asked. Chen's expression grew serious. Then we try again, and again. Because the alternative is returning to a galaxy where might makes right, where the strong prey on the weak, where species destroy themselves fighting over scraps. She gestured toward the viewing port, where the diverse fleet of ships represented the first voluntary gathering of species in galactic history. We have something here that has never existed before. Every species in this room choosing to work together not because they have to, but because they want to build something better. But want is not enough, Silasith observed. Want without the capacity for change is just wishful thinking. Then we'll help each other build that capacity, Chen replied. Humans didn't transform ourselves in isolation. We had help from AI partners, from our reformed institutions, from the shared goal of never again destroying what we love. She looked directly at the Mindari leader. Silasith, your people have the ability to feel the thoughts and emotions of others. That could be the foundation for a new kind of diplomacy, one based on genuine understanding rather than political maneuvering. For the first time since the negotiations began, Silasith's features brightened. You would trust us with such responsibility? We would ask you to help us build it together, not as servants or subjects, but as partners in creating something none of us could achieve alone. The room fell silent as delegates contemplated this new possibility. Peace wasn't just about ending warfare. It was about fundamental transformation of how galactic civilization functioned. Admiral Kextar cleared his throat. Captain Chen, if we proceed with this approach, how long do you estimate before we see meaningful results? Chen smiled, remembering Earth's long journey from destruction to renewal. Generations, Admiral. Real change takes time, but the alternative is remaining trapped in cycles of conflict that benefit no one. Then we'd better get started. Emperor Vexthal said quietly, and for the first time in weeks, his voice carried something that sounded like hope. 2 months after the Galaxy Accords were signed, Captain Chen stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Cooperation Council headquarters. The massive station orbited a neutron star at the galaxy's center, its position chosen to be equally distant from all major civilizations. Below her, the first joint peacekeeping fleet conducted training exercises. It's remarkable, Dr. Vasquez said, joining her at the window. Former enemies learning to work together. Chen watched as a Zephyrian cruiser provided cover for a rebel transport while Mindari telepaths coordinated their movements. The sight would have been impossible just months ago, yet here they were, proving that cooperation could replace conquest. Any word from the Outer Rim territories? Chen asked. That's actually why I'm here. Dr. Vasquez's expression grew concerned. We've received reports of several species attempting to expand into former Imperial space. With the Zephyrians withdrawn, there's a power vacuum developing. Chen sighed. She'd expected this complication. Nature, it seemed, abhorred a vacuum, whether in space or politics. How serious? 3 different species have claimed sovereignty over the Kythera system. The Vorthan Collective is strip mining former rebel strongholds for rare minerals, and there are unconfirmed reports of slave raids in the outer territories. So much for universal peace, Chen muttered. What's the Council's response? They're meeting now to discuss intervention protocols. The problem is our agreements only cover species that signed the accords. These are mostly smaller civilizations that weren't involved in the main conflict. Chen nodded. They'd known this day would come. The galaxy was vast, and not every species could be brought to the negotiating table through diplomacy alone. Some still believe that power came from the barrel of a plasma cannon. Captain Chen to the council chambers, her communicator announced. Emergency session beginning now. The council chambers buzzed with activity as representatives debated intervention strategies. Emperor Vexthul, now bearing the title of First Minister of the reformed Zephyrian Confederation, argued for immediate action. The hegemony of Track is enslaving entire populations, he declared, his voice carrying the authority of his former imperial position. Every day we delay costs lives. Admiral Thessarian, now Director of Interspecies Relations for the Free Worlds Alliance, disagreed. Military intervention makes us no different from the old empire. We cannot force peace at gunpoint. But we can't allow atrocities to continue while we debate philosophy, Admiral Kextar interjected. He now served as Supreme Commander of the Joint Peacekeeping Force, his tactical expertise proving invaluable in organizing former enemies into a coherent military structure. Silasith raised one crystalline hand, and the room fell silent. The Mindari had become the unofficial mediators of the Council, their telepathic abilities allowing them to sense the true intentions behind political statements. The debate reveals our fundamental challenge, Silasith observed. We seek to impose peace through force, which contradicts the very principles we claim to uphold. Then what do you suggest? Chen asked. Allow aggressive species to rebuild the same cycles of conquest we just ended? I suggest we demonstrate a third option, Silasith replied. Neither conquest nor inaction, but transformation. The room erupted in confused murmurs. The concept of transformation as a political strategy was still foreign to most galactic civilizations. Chen leaned forward. Explain. The hegemony of Track enslaves others because they believe strength comes from dominance. The species fighting over the Kythera system assume resources must be hoarded rather than shared. They operate from assumptions that create conflict. Assumptions based on millions of years of evolutionary behavior, Admiral Thessarian pointed out. You can't change fundamental instincts through diplomacy, but you can provide alternatives that make those instincts irrelevant, Chen said, beginning to understand. On Earth, we didn't stop being competitive. We redirected competition toward constructive goals. Dr. Vasquez pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's transformation. Look at how we handled resource scarcity. Instead of fighting over limited resources, we learned to create abundance through technology and cooperation. The hegemony enslaves others for labor, Chen continued, building on the idea. What if we offered them technology that makes slave labor obsolete? Automated systems, self-replicating machinery, energy generation that requires no manual oversight? Emperor Vexthul's eyes brightened. And the species fighting over Kythera? We offer them access to asteroid mining technology that provides more resources than any planet could hold, Admiral Kextar suggested. Make the thing they're fighting over irrelevant. But why would they accept help from us? Director Thessarian asked. These species didn't sign the accords. They have no reason to trust our intentions. Silasith projected gentle waves of understanding. Because we offer them something they want more than conquest, the ability to surpass their current limitations. Chen stood, pacing as the idea developed. We're not asking them to surrender or submit. We're offering them the chance to become something greater than they are. And if they refuse? Admiral Kextar asked. Then we demonstrate the consequences of choosing stagnation over growth, Chen replied. Not through violence, but through success. Species that embrace cooperation advance rapidly. Those that cling to conquest fall behind. The strategy was ambitious beyond anything attempted in galactic history. Instead of forcing peace through superior firepower, they would make war economically and technologically obsolete. I volunteer to lead the first mission, Emperor Vexthul announced. The hegemony of Track was a former imperial vassal. They know me and might be willing to listen. Absolutely not, Admiral Thessarian objected. Sending a former imperial leader to negotiate with slavers sends the wrong message entirely. Actually, Chen said slowly, it might send exactly the right message. Vexthul represents transformation, a former conqueror choosing to build rather than destroy. The symbolism is important, Silaseth agreed, but he should not go alone. This mission requires representatives from all major factions. A joint delegation, Dr. Vasquez suggested. Former Empire, former rebels, neutral species, and humans working together. Show them what cooperation looks like in practice. Admiral Kekstar pulled up tactical displays. I can provide escort ships from the joint fleet. Mixed crews from different species, all using the new cooperative protocols. What about resistance? Director Thessarian asked. The hegemony has a substantial military force. Then we give them a demonstration they won't forget, Chen said with a smile that carried hints of humanity's warrior past. Not destructive, but impressive. Show them what their neighbors are capable of when they work together. Within days, the joint delegation departed for hegemony space. The fleet that accompanied them represented the new galactic order. Zephyrian tactical expertise, rebel innovation, Mindari coordination, and human technology working in perfect harmony. As they traveled, Chen reviewed intelligence reports on the hegemony, an aggressive species with a caste-based society, built around military conquest and slave labor. They had taken advantage of imperial withdrawal to expand their territory and enslaved 3 smaller species in just 2 months. Captain, Admiral Kekstar announced from the bridge, we're approaching hegemony space. They're demanding we state our intentions. Open a channel, Chen ordered. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Nations of Earth, representing the Galactic Cooperation Council. We come bearing gifts and an invitation to greatness. The response was immediate and hostile. This is War Master Thokval of the hegemony of Trek. You will withdraw immediately or face the consequences. We recognize no authority but strength. War Master, Emperor Vexthul spoke from beside Chen. I am Vexthul, former Emperor of the Zephyrian Empire. I wish to speak with you about the future of your species. A long pause followed. The hegemony, like many former imperial vassals, still held the Zephyrian Empire in awe. Impossible, Thokval finally replied. The Emperor is dead. The Empire has fallen. The Empire has transformed, Vexthul corrected. As can the hegemony. War Master, what if I told you that slavery was no longer necessary? That your species could achieve greater power through cooperation than conquest? Another pause, then bitter laughter. Pretty words from a fallen emperor. What could you possibly offer that would surpass the strength of our legions? Chen smiled. How about we show you? The demonstration began with a single human vessel separating from the fleet. It approached a dead asteroid in the system and deployed what appeared to be a small probe. Within hours, the asteroid had been converted into a fully functional mining and manufacturing facility, producing advanced technology at a rate that would have required millions of slave workers. Impressed yet? Chen asked as the automated systems began constructing ships that surpassed hegemony technology. Tricks, Thokval snarled, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. War Master, Salasith projected across all frequencies. We sense your thoughts. You recognize the potential of what we offer. Your species could become builders of wonders rather than takers of scraps. And if we refuse, then you remain as you are, Chen replied simply, while your neighbors become gods. 1 year after the Galaxy Accords, Captain Chen stood in the same observation deck, where she had first watched former enemies learn to cooperate. The view had changed dramatically. Where once a single station had orbited the galactic center, now hundreds of structures formed a vast city in space. Representatives from over 3,000 species worked together in the largest cooperative venture in galactic history. The transformation reports are remarkable, Dr. Vasquez said, approaching with her daily briefings. The hegemony of Track has converted 80% of their slave labor to automated systems. Their production efficiency has increased by 4,000%, Chen smiled, remembering War Master Thokval's stunned expression when he realized his species could achieve more through cooperation than they ever had through conquest. And the territorial disputes? Resolved. When we offered the competing species access to asteroid belt mining rights, they discovered there were enough resources for everyone. The Kethra system has become a joint development project. Any new challenges? Dr. Vasquez hesitated. Actually, yes. We're receiving reports of species in distant galaxies requesting assistance. Word of our success has spread beyond the local group. Chen raised an eyebrow. Distant galaxies? How distant? The Andromeda Galaxy has sent a delegation. Apparently, they've been monitoring our subspace communications and want to establish formal diplomatic relations. They're dealing with their own version of the Zephyrian Empire. The implications were staggering. What had begun as intervention in a single galactic conflict was expanding into something truly universal. Chen wondered if humanity was ready for responsibilities on such a scale. There's more, Dr. Vasquez continued. The delegation from Andromeda brought concerning news. They report that several other galaxies are moving toward total warfare. Entire galactic superclusters may be at risk. Before Chen could respond, her communicator announced an emergency council session. She made her way to the chambers, where she found the representatives in heated debate. We cannot become the police force for the entire universe, Director Thessarian argued. Our resources are finite and we have barely stabilized our own galaxy. But we cannot ignore genocide on a galactic scale, Emperor Vexthol countered. If we have the power to help, don't we have the responsibility? Admiral Kextar pulled up tactical displays showing the scope of the crisis. According to the Andromedan reports, we're looking at conflicts involving hundreds of billions of species across multiple galactic superclusters. The scale is beyond anything we've encountered. Silasith projected waves of contemplation. The question is not whether we can help, but whether we should. Intervention on this scale could fundamentally alter the development of galactic civilization across the known universe. Chen took her seat, processing the magnitude of the situation. What exactly are the Andromedans requesting? Technical assistance and diplomatic support, Admiral Kextar replied. Their version of the Zephyrian Empire has developed planet-killing weapons and is systematically exterminating species that resist conquest. Sound familiar? Dr. Vasquez muttered. But unlike our situation, the Andromedans have no organized resistance, Director Thessarian pointed out. It's a one-sided slaughter. Emperor Vexthol leaned forward. Then they need more than assistance. They need hope. Chen considered the parallels to their own conflict. A year ago, the galaxy had seemed doomed to endless warfare between the Empire and rebels. Now, former enemies worked together on projects that benefited everyone. The transformation had been so complete that it was hard to remember why they had fought at all. Silasith, Chen said. What do you sense from the Andromedan delegation? The Mindari leader's crystalline features shifted through patterns of deep contemplation, desperation, but also genuine hope. They have observed our transformation and believe it possible for their own galaxy. However, they also carry darker thoughts, such as fear that their empire has advanced beyond the point where peaceful intervention is possible. Their weapons make the old Zephyrian arsenal look primitive. Admiral Kextar pulled up intelligence data from the Andromedans. Energy weapons that can cause stars to go supernova. Temporal manipulation devices that can erase entire civilizations from history. Dimensional weapons that banish matter to alternate realities. The room fell silent as delegates contemplated weapons that could destroy not just planets or star systems, but the very fabric of space-time itself. How is that level of technology even possible? Dr. Vasquez asked. Desperation drives innovation, Chen replied grimly. Their empire has been fighting for 10,000 years instead of 3,000. They've had more time to develop increasingly destructive capabilities. Then conventional intervention is impossible, Director Thessarian concluded. We cannot risk our own galaxy by confronting such advanced weapons. Unless we approach the problem differently, Chen said, an idea beginning to form. What if we don't confront their weapons at all? Explain, Emperor Vexthol requested. Chen stood pacing as she had during their first intervention. Their empire's greatest weapon is also its greatest weakness. They've become so focused on destruction that they've forgotten how to create. How does that help us? Because creation is more powerful than destruction. They can erase planets, but we can build new ones. They can manipulate time, but we can create technologies that exist outside temporal flow. They can banish matter to other dimensions, but we can establish permanent gateways to retrieve it. Silasith's features brightened. You propose to make their weapons irrelevant by surpassing their destructive capacity with creative alternatives. Exactly. For every weapon they deploy, we provide a solution that makes it meaningless. They destroy a planet, we rebuild it in days. They erase a species from history. We restore them from dimensional backups. But that level of technology, Admiral Kekstar began, already exists. Dr. Vasquez interrupted, checking her datapad. Our joint research projects have been developing exactly these capabilities. We just haven't implemented them on a galactic scale. Chen smiled. Because we haven't needed to. But now we do. Emperor Vexthol's eyes gleamed with understanding. We're not going to fight their empire. We're going to obsolete it. More than that, Chen replied. We're going to demonstrate what they could become if they chose creation over destruction. The Council voted to approve the Andromeda mission, but with strict protocols. They would not engage in direct military conflict. Instead, they would establish safe zones protected by creative technology, offer refuge to threatened species, and demonstrate alternatives to warfare. As the joint fleet prepared for the intergalactic journey, Chen reflected on how far they had all come. A year ago, the galaxy had been trapped in cycles of violence that seemed unbreakable. Now they were preparing to export peace to other galaxies. Nervous? Dr. Vasquez asked as they boarded the flagship. Excited, Chen replied. We're about to find out if our approach works beyond our own galaxy. The journey to Andromeda took 3 weeks using human dimensional transit technology. When they arrived, the devastation was immediately apparent. Entire star systems had been reduced to expanding clouds of plasma. Civilizations that had existed for millions of years had been erased so completely that only gravitational anomalies marked where they had once thrived. My God, Admiral Kekstar whispered as sensor reports showed the scope of destruction. This is what our galaxy would have looked like if we hadn't intervened, Emperor Vexthul observed quietly. The Andromedan Empire detected their arrival immediately and dispatched a war fleet that dwarfed anything the local group had ever seen. Ships the size of moons moved with impossible speed, their weapons charging energies that could crack reality itself. This is Supreme Annihilator Vexkoth of the Andromedan Empire, came the transmission. You will surrender immediately or face complete erasure from existence. Chen stepped forward as the joint fleet took defensive positions. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Nations of Earth, representing the Galactic Cooperation Council. We come not as conquerors, but as builders. We offer your empire something you have never possessed. And what could primitive aliens possibly offer the supreme power in the universe? Chen smiled, and for a moment she felt the weight of her species' entire history behind her words. We offer you the chance to become something greater than destroyers. We offer you the power to create instead of merely ending things. You offer weakness disguised as strength. Witness the fate of those who oppose the Empire. One of the massive Andromedan vessels fired a weapon that caused a nearby star to begin collapsing into a black hole. The display of power was absolute, terrifying, and completely irrelevant. Impressive, Chen acknowledged. Dr. Vasquez, would you care to respond? The human science vessel deployed a device that stabilized the collapsing star and began converting the released energy into matter. T.